Recently, I asked you guys if you had any questions when it comes to setting up the back office of your business. And one of the main questions that I saw was, where do I even start? And does it matter what kind of business I have? And I think ultimately what this comes down to is there a right way to organize my business? Well, the short answer is no, there is no one right way. So today, I'm going to take you through a simple exercise to help you prioritize as you set up the back office of your business. So grab a notebook and a pen or your favorite digital productivity tool because we're about to create your custom back office action plan. Okay, so if you're going to use regular pen and paper, that's fantastic. You'll be able to set it up the same way that my screen will be set up in a minute. I'm going to be using Notion. You could do something similar to this if you were using Trello or Asana. It would just be formatted a little bit differently, right? But how you set it up and what it visually looks like is not nearly as important as the information that's included. Okay, so I'm calling this my tech stack action plan. And a tech stack is essentially the grouping of tools, the software, the platforms, the systems that you use to run your business. So as you can see from the list that I've got out here right now, it can literally be anything from your website platform to your email marketing, to your social media, to your organization, all of those things. So this is just a list of kind of like the top ones that came to mind when I was setting this up, as far as like what most businesses will use on some level. So you'll see some things here that you recognize and you know what they are and you use them. And you may see some things here that you're like, I don't know what that means. I don't know if I need that. And that's okay. I just wanted to throw them out there so that depending on where you are with your business, you may already have some of these dialed in. And so if you do, you just won't need to add them to your list. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick rundown of what these things are at the highest level, just so that you know what I'm talking about and you can decide, do these need to be added to my list or not? So website, what I'm talking about there is like the back end of your website, the hosting of the website, and like the design, the builder of your website. So that could be anything from like Wix or Squarespace or WordPress or Shopify, whatever it is that you're using or thinking about using. That's what that would be. Email marketing is pretty self-explanatory. We've talked about that quite a bit on the channel, so I'm going to kind of let that go. For social media strategy, this can be a little bit varied, right? So this is about figuring out not only what platforms, but more specifically, we're talking about what is your strategy? Where are you going to post? Are you going to schedule things out? Are you going to do things manually? Like all of those kinds of things. That's what I mean by social media strategy. Organization, productivity. So that would be things like Notion, Trello, Asana, ClickUp, all of those things. Membership or online courses. This is maybe one of the things that's a little bit more specialized to certain types of businesses. But when you have an aspect of your website that is going to be protected behind a paywall, so somebody needs to purchase a course or join your membership in order to get access to those things, that's typically either going to be rolled up in the website that you choose. So whether you're going to go with something like a Kajabi or Kartra or something like that, or if you're going to have it if you're using like WordPress like I do, then you might have some plugins that are building that out for you, which is what I personally have. POS or invoicing. POS is point of sale. So this is a little bit more if you have either a brick and mortar or maybe you do vendor shows or things like that, you need to be able to take payments in person. And invoicing is obvious. That would be applying to anyone, whether you're taking those payments in person or you're using, taking credit cards from, online purchases and things like that. A CRM is a customer relationship manager. And we've talked about this briefly on the channel before. Not everybody needs a full-blown CRM. That tends to be a little bit more for the larger businesses, but it still comes in very, very handy earlier in your business, even when you're a little bit smaller. So just throw it on there depending on where you're at in your business right now. And then your sales funnel, which we've mentioned before, can kind of go along with your email marketing, but not necessarily. So we're going to go ahead and keep that separate. Okay. So then the next thing that we need to do is go through those things, or whatever 10, no more than 10. And I say that because we're going to try to narrow this down to one right now, which I know is going to feel like, no, I have to do all these things. I know, but we're taking this step by step. Okay. So we need to go through these and say, okay, what of these things is something that I want to have in my business? What is something that I know I need to have in my business? And what is something that is like non-negotiable? My business cannot function without it. Okay. So this is going to totally depend on your business. There are some businesses that absolutely need to have a website. And, I'm going to even add to website e-commerce, because a lot of times that goes hand in hand. Sometimes it doesn't, right? That might even be like an Etsy shop connected to your website, all of that. So if you're selling, for example, physical products that need to have a place to be displayed online, then website / e-commerce would be absolutely a non-negotiable for you, because how on earth could you sell something if nobody can go see what you're selling, right? So in that kind of situation, that would be considered a non-negotiable for you. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do for myself with these colors. If you're using something like Trello or Asana, go ahead and use labels. If you are using pen and paper, then just grab your highlighters or different colored pens or whatever kind of aesthetic you prefer working in. We're going to do this from the perspective of somebody who is selling physical products, because I feel like a lot of the times on this channel, I do a lot of things that are geared more towards coaches, things like that. And the people who sell physical products get a little left out. So if you are selling physical products, well, obviously, this is kind of a non-negotiable for everyone, right? Everybody needs to have a way to take payments. It's a non-negotiable. Social media strategy is, in my opinion, more of a want. Yes, it's something that you're probably going to do, but does it need to be automated into a system? Not right away, because that's something that you can just do organically and manually to start with. Okay. Same thing with email marketing. I know that that's probably going to surprise a lot of people. That is something I'm going to highlight that as a need, because it is something that I think is necessary regardless of your business, but it's not necessarily a non-negotiable from day one. For the type of business we're talking about, I'm going to go ahead and say membership or online courses is a want, or maybe even you leave it off your list altogether. The sales funnel, this is something I'm going to say is a need, because again, yes, you absolutely need to have a way to be letting people know about what you're selling and take them through a customer journey, but it's not necessarily vital to the beginning of your business, right? It's not necessary for you to make money. It's going to make it easier for you to sell, but it is not necessary for you to actually sell things. Okay. A CRM, for this case, I'm going to make this a want. This is definitely not something you need right out of the gate. Organization and productivity. This is a non-negotiable. So I don't care what kind of business you have. Organization and productivity, a way to determine how you run your business, is a non-negotiable. I'm just going to go ahead and say that like very firm, because you have to know how your business runs. Otherwise, your business is not running. It's just happening. You're just reacting to people expressing interest in one way or another. So having some level, whether you're doing it digitally in a system like Notion or Trello or whatever it might be, or it's a little bit more analog, paper, pen, that sort of thing, it still has to be there, that kind of system. Okay. So it's a non-negotiable for any business. And going back into our list here, we've got our website and e-commerce, which is also a non-negotiable if you are selling online, which in this example, we're selling online. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and make that a non-negotiable as well. Everything that's green, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the right to get it out of our face and not stressing us out. Okay. And then we've got our needs in the middle. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring this other non-negotiable over here to the left. Now, I do realize that if you're using pen and paper, you're like, why didn't you tell me that I needed to do that before I wrote it out? Because you don't have the ability to just drag things around like that. I know, I'm sorry. This is why I love using digital tools, because they're so agile. They're so capable of being like reformatted and changed to shift and pivot with whatever is going on, whatever you're focused on in that moment. So that's kind of why I love using digital tools. As long as it's set up and color coded in a way, or circles and underlines or whatever you did, so that it's very clear to you which ones are non-negotiable, which ones are needs, and which ones are wants. So now from here, we need to decide, okay, of the 3 that we've decided are non-negotiables, what is my number 1 priority right now? And this is where it's completely going to vary based on you. So you may have kind of an analog organizational process. You may have your lists and things like that, and it's working for you right now. So maybe that's not your number 1 priority. Or maybe you have no organization at all and you're feeling incredibly stressed out about that fact, and that is your number 1 priority. Okay, so for this example though, I'm going to say that getting our website set up, getting an e-commerce store, a platform of some kind, is our number 1 goal at this moment, because without it, we don't even need a way to take payments because there's nowhere for them to shop. I'm going to go ahead and star that one to say like, hey, this is the one, this is the goal that I'm going to focus on for this process. And ultimately, you're going to be going back and doing this same process for all of the things that you've determined are non-negotiables, needs, and then eventually your wants. This is a process you're going to repeat over and over again once you've completed the last thing, because the point here is that we're going to focus on one thing at a time. So once you've decided on your goal, if you're anything like me, you have a million ideas now running through your brain. I need to do this, 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 this. If you try to immediately prioritize those things, it's going to overwhelm, and it's going to probably make you forget some things because you're so focused on trying to get them organized in order as you go. Don't worry about that. Let's just get them out. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start listing out some different things that we need to do in order to get a website set up. Okay. So one of the first things would be researching platforms. If you don't already know what you want to use, if you do, great. If you don't, take the time to research. It is well worth your time, because once you've gotten one all set up, if you then realize, oh, I don't love this platform, then you're going to have to do it all over again. And let me tell you, it's not worth it. Take the time to be sure that it's the right platform for you at that time. Make sure that it's got room to grow with you. Okay. Make sure it's something that we actually, you know what? We have a video about this. So I'm going to go ahead and link that above. Make sure you go watch that one if you haven't seen it already. Okay, so we're gonna do a couple more tasks here, and you could end up with a huge, huge list here, okay? But I'm just gonna start really simple. Oh, and one thing that's really cool about if you're using Notion, like I am, because it has AI, we can activate the AI and say, tasks for creating a website. Awesome, look at all this. Define your target audience, conduct keyword research. That's amazing. We're going to go ahead and keep all of those for right now. If you're doing a website one too, then you're welcome for the AI. Right now, this is getting a little bit long. That's okay. Your list is going to get long too. That's great. If you want to do columns or something so that it doesn't take up as much page, that's great. Once we reach the point where we've got a decent list, doesn't have to be completely all-encompassing, because as you get going and as you start thinking about this more, you're going to think of more things that you need to do, and that's okay. But for now, we're going to go ahead and before we move on to prioritizing, we're going to take a minute and look at the list, especially if you used AI like I did, or if you're using some of the examples that I have here. Before we move on to prioritizing, we're going to figure out, okay, what is a realistic amount of time that this might take me? Now, we know that, there's going to need to be a little bit of flexibility with ourselves, but it's important when we're setting goals that we always set a deadline. I'm sure as a business owner, you're already aware of SMART goals. You know that it's important to make sure that they are timely, that they have a specific deadline. So we're going to do that here too. So taking a look at this list, we do have quite a lot of stuff going on here. Some of these things aren't going to take super long time. I mean, once you've done your research, purchasing your domain, purchasing your website hosting, those aren't going to take a very long time. And being realistic, when we're talking about something as major as creating your website / e-commerce, however you're doing it, especially if you're doing it not using a tool like Etsy, but you're using something like from scratch that you're going to create a whole website and build your e-commerce into that, it is going to take a significant amount of time. So don't tell yourself, oh, I'm going to get this done in 2 weeks. It's not going to happen. Yes, done is better than perfect, but you also want to be realistic and give yourself the appropriate amount of time to get it done correctly and to get it done in the best possible way, especially when we're talking about something as important as your e-commerce or your website, because these things are things that your customer is directly interacting with. So think less about what is going to be easiest and quickest and best for me, and think more about what is going to create the best experience for my customer. Right now, it is the end of August as I am recording this. So I want to be realistic. I want to give myself time to really do the research properly and really make sure everything is working and tested and all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself all the way to the beginning of the year. So I'm going to say January of 2024 is my deadline for this. And I'm not going to set a specific date yet. That's something that as I get going with this and as I am working on this project and developing this, and I'm starting to see, okay, these things are going faster than I thought they were, or these things are taking way longer than I thought they would, then we can readjust or choose our specific launch date at that point. So right now we're going to keep it a little bit broad because of the just sheer magnitude of what it is that we're trying to set up. Okay, so once we've done that, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take all of these brain dump tasks and we want to start to prioritize them. So we want to look at them in a couple of different ways. So we've got things that are time sensitive. So the things that need to be done in a certain order versus the things that can kind of wait until a little bit later. And then the things that are critical and the things that are not critical. Okay. There are some other aspects to this kind of prioritization where if you decide that you're going to outsource or delegate some things, but on this channel, we like to be hands-on and do as much of it as possible ourselves. So I'm not going to include that part of it. If you're somebody that knows that there are certain aspects of the tech that, especially for like a website or something like that, that are just going to require the help of a professional to make sure that it's functioning properly, then definitely add in a layer of delegation or outsourcing into this prioritization, okay? So just to give you an example, I'm not going to go through all of these because that'll just take a lot. This video will get very long if I do that. But I'm just going to show you what I mean by time sensitive versus not time sensitive. Things like researching your platforms or choosing and purchasing your domain name and your website hosting. These things are time sensitive because they need to be done first. They need to be set up and ready to go when you start doing things like writing marketing copy and designing the brand and all of that. So we're going to go ahead and take things like that and we're going to add them into time sensitive. Also, are they critical or not critical? Doing your platform research and purchasing your domain and website platform are absolutely critical because if you don't do them, you can't do any of the rest of it, right? You don't have a website. So I'm going to go ahead and put into time sensitive and critical. We're going to do platform research and purchase. Oops. Okay. Platform research and purchase. That is time sensitive and critical. Now let's take a look at our keyword research for SEO. This is something that is very important, but is this something that you need to do at the beginning or can it happen a little bit later into the process? Okay. SEO is super important, but it is something that you can save until a little bit later. In fact, you're going to need to save it for a little bit later in the process. So we're going to go ahead and put it into critical because it's vital for your website's success, but it's not time sensitive. Okay. Does that make sense? Something that's not time sensitive, but definitely critical. Things like defining your target audience, that is something that is also going to end up in the time sensitive and critical. Now, the reason that defining your target audience is both time sensitive and critical is because if you don't know who you're building this experience for, then you're not going to have a lot of direction and purpose. It's going to make it very difficult for you to know what decisions to make. So it's really, really important that you define that from the beginning. For an example of something that would be considered not critical and not time sensitive would be something like, do I want to blog? Whether or not you choose to blog is usually something that you can decide later. And it's really not critical. That's more about how you choose to market and how you choose to get visibility about your website is whether or not you're blogging or you're doing videos or you're running ads or all of the above. It's not something that's critical to designing your website, and it is not something that's time sensitive either, because you can always add that kind of thing on later. So I've gone ahead and prioritized some of the rest of the tasks for you so that you can start to see that you're going to end up having a couple of these lists start to get a little heavy. They're going to get a little more full than the others. And more than likely, the critical path is going to start to get a little bit heavy because we start to think that everything is critical, that every task that we need to do is critical. We may even think that every task that we need to do is time sensitive. So you may want to take a little bit of like time away, take a couple hours, take a night, and then come back to it with a little more discernment and just really determine, are these things really critical? Are they really time sensitive? Or are they things that I felt that way in the moment, but really they can kind of wait until a little bit later, whatever. Just make sure that you really don't let the time sensitive and critical get overloaded. If it's too full, if it's like everything is falling into that bucket, then you're going to end up overwhelmed, right? And you're not going to get any of this stuff done. So really be as conservative about how you're defining these things, how you're categorizing them as you possibly can. And once you've completed that, you can see here, we have a pretty clear list of what our tasks are going to be. So you can see right away that your number one task that you need to start focusing on is your platform research so that you can get it purchased and get ready to start building right away. And this is true whether you're going to delegate or outsource some of these things or do it all yourself. The first thing you got to do is the platform research. Even if you are going to outsource the development of this platform to make sure that it functions the way that you need it to, you still need to be the one to do the research and make sure that you're choosing a platform that you're going to be able to work in the future. Having somebody else set up the website for you does not absolve you from knowing how to use the back end of that tool. So make sure that it's not something that's so technical that it's out of your reach. So from here, it's super clear what our tasks are. We're going to start with our platform research, and then we're going to start defining our target audience, and we're going to start developing our style guide for our brand. Then we'll move on to our keyword research, developing the functionality, and so on. Does that make sense? Now, I know we did a really specific example here, but this exercise will work for any of the options that you might have chosen. If you have any questions as you're working through this exercise for yourself, please use the comments here on the video. I would love to help you out with that. The online tools for your business do not need to be complicated or overwhelming. It's time to let it be easy.